Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we get you ready for the Detroit Lions training camp. We're going to talk about the players we think you should keep an eye on, the position group battles to focus on, and any other Detroit Lions or NFL topic that is relevant. That includes Netflix Season 2 quarterback, featuring Detroit's very own Jared Goff. That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is James Williams, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Coach Jerry Angers, former Michigan High School Coach of the Year, who's also named Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions. He is the current scouting and training director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, it's good to have you back with us.
Great to be back talking football with my brothers.
All right, and joining you and I is the familiar face in James Cook, the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle, also the sports writer of the year for Community Newspaper Holdings Incorporated. James, good to have you back as usual.
Good to be here. Good that there's going to be professional football this month.
That is exciting. That is awesome. And it's just nice to have Jerry back with us, man, because, you know, he's enjoying that northern Michigan summertime and got some other stuff going on family related, which is pretty awesome. But we're good to happy to have you back here, Coach, with us. As we get started, I want to remind all the listeners, tell your friends about the show. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all major streaming platforms. Video version is available on YouTube should you desire. As far as social media goes, you can find us mostly on Twitter and Instagram. Okay, guys, let's look over the schedule for training camp. Rookies reporting July 16th. Vets 3 days later. That is on the 19th. Practices, there are some open to the public as usual this year. There's 10 of them starting on July 26th, but you need tickets. And tickets were released to the public on Tuesday morning. If you didn't get them already, you're going to have to find somebody that did because those things just tend to go real fast. Mm-hmm. Joint practices. They got 3 of those this year. That is good because you can learn a lot from joint practices. August 13th, 14th, and 21st. Those are against the Dolphins and the Texans. And, of course, that first preseason game is July 31st this year. That's the Hall of Fame game versus the Chargers. The Lions have 4 games instead of 3 in the preseason. So let's just start with all that. I just threw a bunch of basic info out about schedule, practices, all that. James, any reaction, any thoughts, any insights on any of that to give the listeners?
Those joint practices, I think, are going to be great. I mean, you know, they weren't at home last year, so they're going to be home this year. I think, you know how Campbell coaches his team, playing in front of their own fans after last season and everything like that. Those guys are going to be chomping at the bit during those open practices. I'm very interested to see what comes out of those.
Awesome. Yeah, Coach, 2 years ago, you and I went down to one of those joint practices. That was just a great opportunity to see the Lions going against other players, other teams.
Oh, yeah. We talked about it, too, when we were down there. It's that, you're beating on each other, on your brother, the guy that's sharing the locker room with you. Now you get an opportunity to go hit somebody else and prove some things. And, we got some guys that are looking to make a name for themselves so they don't get cut. I'm sure we're going to talk about that. So those will be fun. It's just on the early start, seems like it's going to be an extremely long season for the Lions because of this extra game. But again, the one less OTA I think is going to feed right into them. So it's going to be fun.
Sounds good. And I actually think that extra game is going to come in handy for a lot of those guys that you started referencing, Coach, guys that we're going to have to see a little bit development out of if they want to make the team. Okay, let's start there. Who are we looking forward to take a step forward this year? Who are we hoping will take a step forward? Now, we got a lot of options here. I want to start off with Hendon Hooker. I want to start with that one right there. There's a guy who a lot of things were expected when they drafted him, but we also knew he was going to be a project for a lot of different reasons. And so I think this preseason is going to be instrumental because he got injured last preseason. He didn't get to take as many snaps, and there's no substitution, Coach, for live snaps. And in preseason are live snaps versus replicating something in practice. I'm not worried about the bust label. I think that label gets overblown too much. And if someone doesn't work out, it doesn't necessarily mean they're a bust. It just means it didn't work out. But with him, you're hoping he could be that confident potential backup, that backup with upside potential. So, James, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on Hendon Hooker? What do you want to see out of him? And then Coach will come to you.
Well, I mean, before he got that concussion in training camp last year or in the exhibition games, he looked pretty confident, pretty good, was running the ball well, kind of bringing that other dimension to the quarterback that Jared Goff doesn't, which is, being able to move the chains with his legs and extend plays a little bit more than Goff can. So things were looking good before he got that concussion, which obviously set him back. He would have gotten a couple more lot more drives, worth of experience, which would have really helped him. As far as labeling him a bust, I mean, he wasn't drafted to be a starter right away because you had Jared Goff. As soon as they re-signed Jared Goff, best case scenario for him was going to be a backup and play if Goff got hurt. That was it. So Goff hasn't gotten hurt. That's the good part. We haven't had to see Hendon Hooker in an NFL game except for mop-up duty. So I don't know if you can label him necessarily a bust yet. He just hasn't gotten the chance to play.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, they brought Kyle Allen in as another insurance policy. A lot of people point back, they brought Teddy Bridgewater in because Hendon Hooker's not good enough. I think that's a perspective that is oversimplified, and we've talked about that in the past on the show. But we do want to see steps forward, Coach, from Hendon Hooker. It's time. He's been around. What do you want to see out of him to be confident that he can hold that number 2 spot pretty good?
Well, two things that's in his favor. We have 4 preseason games, so he's going to get a ton of reps. Let me ask you guys something too. How many years did Jordan Love sit before he became a starter? He's in our own division again. Yeah, he's not a bust because he's not playing because of Goff. So yeah, he's got to show that he can take the reins if in a case that Goff does, knock on wood, hopefully not go down. But he's athletic enough. I'm sure he's been working out a ton. And it'll tell the telltale sign how much quarterback stuff he worked on during the summer where he was training at. We don't see anything, where he was training, but we know he was training. So, James made a point. He was running around well, throwing the ball well, and 2 years in the system. The other thing too is he's coming into basically a little bit of a new system because of a new OC. So that puts him on an even playing field where Jared Goff and the other guys had been in that system for a couple of years. So, I'm looking forward to seeing him for 4 games.
All right, I am too. I think he'll get a ton of playing time. Obviously, Kyle Allen will get in some as well. And the question will be, do the Lions carry 2 or 3 quarterbacks on the full 53-man roster? Okay, another guy I want to bring up right away is Kobe Sorsdale, Coach. Offensive lineman. I think it's his 3rd year is where he's going right now at this point. And, expected to be a project and a development guy. But after year 2, we still don't know where he fits. And at this point, if he still fits. Would you agree with that statement? And if so, or if not, let me know. And then what do you want to see out of him?
Well, I think the big thing is they moved him to tackle, correct? Was he a guard? Then he played some guard, then went back to tackle, his college position. And
Yep.
so, is he going to be that backup for the best tackle in the game? And that's the biggest thing. I did say that, best tackle in the game. But I think we don't see anything because we don't see him on the field. But then again, when he stepped in, he had the one bad game 2 years ago. He got beat up pretty good. But the other one where he played extensively, he showed some signs. And a lot of these guys are developing from that. Again, the big thing is Dan Campbell wants competition. We bring in another quarterback. It's not because Hendon Hooker can't play. It's because they don't want Hendon Hooker to think he's number 2. So they drafted linemen. So Kobe Sorsdale knows that he better be on the top of his game, or they're gonna take a project over him if they're. That's just my gut feeling. So he has to have a big camp.
All right, James, your thoughts on Colby there. Again, that tackle position, that number 3 position at tackle's a big deal. Dan Skipper filled in last year, but I think the Lions want an elevated number 3 guy there if something happens to Decker or Sewell.
Yeah, he's got a much better chance, I think, of sticking at tackle than at guard. just because there's so much competition now at guard. I mean, it's a log jam there in those middle three spots on the offensive line. There's an opportunity there to stick as the third or fourth tackle if they keep, if they keep more than just skipper. But I think right now he's probably in the outside looking in. He's going to have to win himself a spot in training camp. He's going to have to outplay somebody on that roster and maybe a couple people to be able to make the 53 this year. And, I think it's a pretty decent chance we end up seeing him on the practice squad.
Oh yeah, that could be the case. And again, I know people don't love the idea of the extra preseason game, but there are a number of guys on the Lions team that could really benefit from this fourth game this year. Because it's not like you're going to see the starters playing in all these games, of course not. But these guys down the depth chart, I mean, we talked about how great the depth on this team was last year. These guys, some of them are going to be working really hard to keep their position on this roster. So that'll be a great benefit, a great opportunity for Sorsdale to hopefully get a bunch of reps with this. And another guy that falls right into that category is Broderick Martin. I don't know where he is on the depth chart, Coach. I think he's like third string maybe at this point. But there's another guy that we're hoping will take a step forward and become a very dependable rotational guy. And that's going to be a needed thing. Maybe not so much this year, but the following year, because you're going to have some potential departures after this season. What are you looking at, or what are you hoping to see from Broderick Martin?
Yeah, the same thing. Last year coming into camp, he had cut weight. He went on that McNeil diet, it sounded like, and he trimmed himself down. He was basically drafted as a plugger, as a big-bodied guy with skill level, height-wise. I think that was one of the things that they were looking at with him. So, I think he's got to have a great camp, and then he's just got to stay healthy. I mean, we don't know. We really don't know how it panned out from last year if he'd have stayed healthy the whole year with all the other injuries we had. So, and again, I think, this is that competition that Campbell and the group love to do. The staff love to do that. Guys like him, he's reading the press clippings, even though they try not to, as Goff had said in the quarterback show, but he's reading them and he knows that, they brought Lopez in, they got Levi. I mean, and so he's got to have a big camp. He's got to have a big camp, or he'd end up on the practice squad unless somebody else picks him up.
Yeah, that's another guy just like Colby Sorsdale, where if they don't make it, they could go to the practice squad, or they could get picked up by another team. James, where are you seeing Broderick Martin right now with all this influx of talent they've got, with people coming back from injury throughout the season as well, but on the defensive line there?
I mean, right now, if you count Ali McNeil, although he's going to miss the first half of the season, Martin is like seventh on your depth chart as far as defensive tackles. I mean, he's more of a nose at this point than the three technique kind of guy. But I mean, you've got McNeil, Williams, who they just drafted, Reeder for another year, Onwuzurike for another year, Lopez, Wingo, and then Martin. So he's seven, but three of those guys are on the last year of their contract too. So there's
Right.
maybe some opportunity next year. Reeder, Onwuzurike, and Lopez are all last year of their deals. So maybe there's more opportunities next year. Maybe they keep him around because of that. He's also going to have to hold off some guys like Pat O'Connor and Miles Adams, who are guys that played ahead of him at the end of last season when he was supposedly healthy. And he was basically a healthy scratch, and they played.
All right. Well, and let's go back to the offensive line, James. I skipped over this guy by mistake. I should have stayed on the offensive line, but Giovanni Manu, you wanted to bring up a little bit about him.
Yeah, I think this is a big camp for him. Getting that playing time is going to be invaluable for him because of the huge difference in level of where he played before he came to the Lions. He just needs game action, game reps. The joint practices, the exhibition games are all going to be huge for him. He needs to get those reps, work on his technique and everything, and hopefully be that tackle that maybe, when Taylor Decker eventually hangs him up, you have your tackle in waiting. You move Penny over to the left side and Manu to the right. So I mean that's best case scenario for the Lions, that he's ready when that happens, which I mean could be as soon as a year or so. You never know.
Yeah. And again, we're still talking about that third offensive tackle. That's your backup
Mhm.
guy. Coach, do you think there's a chance Giovanni Manu could slip into that 3 spot by the end of training camp?
You know, everything I'm reading from the offensive lineman, the night and day, it's night and day from last year. It's night and day that you continue to hear that. I showed you that I sent you guys videos of him working out at that OPL out, which is which is the best offensive line. He's working out with Decker during the off season. They were out working out together out there, of course, with I mean, the list is humongous on the guys that work out there. So, it sounds like he is really, putting the work in. I mean, you look at his body; he's a freak. He's a freak athlete. He's long. He moves his feet well. He's fast. He's got all the traits. I think the mental game. I think the mental game is what he had to work on. But again, you don't hear anything bad on everybody. Usually when those guys are working off campus, or not off site. And then, but when he came into OTAs, they were just, you read the offensive line guys' reports, and they couldn't speak highly enough of him. So looking forward to that giant moving around and see what he can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll get to rookies in a minute and just kind of see what we hope to look and see out of those guys. But any other guys that are kind of buried down the depth chart a little bit that you're like, man, I'm hoping to see some development out of this guy, or hoping to see a step forward out of this guy? James, anybody's coming to mind for you?
Well, I want to see Sion Vaki play more. You'll get a pretty good look at him, I would assume, in the exhibition games. But I'd like to see him more on offense. I don't know that they have any plans to play him on defense. I think it's pretty much just special teams and offense from what I've seen. But he did play defense in college. The other guys would be Mahogany, to see if he's still going to be in that competition with the two new guards. And then Wingo, I think, is another guy who has played, pretty well when he's been on the field. So if he can make another step, I think that would be great. And I think that Meek Robertson has maybe another gear left too, and he's going to be incredibly motivated this year because it's a contract year. And he played so well last year. If he plays at that good or better this year, he's going to get a big contract somewhere.
Well, that's the thing. The guy doesn't even need to take another step forward. But if he
Mhm.
does, watch out. But even if he just holds serve, I mean, the guy's looking at some great options once the season's over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what Sione Vaki does, because he's different than Craig Reynolds, but he could develop into another part of this offense, especially when you have a new offensive coordinator. It means there's going to be an increased chance of extra wrinkles, and we'll get to that as well. Christian Mahogany, I think Coach is going to talk about that, is, that offensive line. We don't know how those parts are going to fit in the middle, but we want to see him out there a little bit, and we want to see him getting those reps and getting comfortable. And Wingo, you said, Mekhi Wingo's like one of Coach's favorite players. So that's another guy that Coach will have an eye on. Any of those names that we just brought up, Coach, you want to kind of talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I love a Meek. I just got one of my, those guys that I text with, brought out who has the best defensive backfield in the game. And of course, they're thinking the Ravens because they picked up the guy from the Packers, whatever. And my biggest argument was, I came in and says, if TA has a breakout year and then I threw out there Meek Robinson, hey, maybe arguably the best receiver in the NFL. He held him to 3 receptions for 56 yards on 9 catches. And Justin JJ. And so, and you know what, you guys, and you saw his emotion in the locker room because somebody wanted him, because somebody believes in him. So this guy is, no doubt in my mind, probably worked harder than he ever has in the offseason because he doesn't want to let his brothers down. And that's how this team is built. We always talk about it, and I'm looking forward to it. Meek's gonna eat it up in that slot. And then Wingo, you guys, how I feel about him. If he can stay healthy and he can get it going, he's gonna be another one of those guys. And Mahogany's a dog, guys. I'm gonna tell you right now, he's gonna be a great guard for us.
Nice. Yeah, I'm looking forward to all those. And Amik Robertson solidifying that nickel spot, which, let's stay right there in the secondary. Second-year guys, Terrion Arnold and Enos Rakestraw. I think both of them have room to improve. I think most people expect them to improve. Rakestraw is going to be big because they want him to be the number 3 guy on the outside. And if you look, that spot's still open. I mean, we know who the top 2 are, and we know we have a lot of depth. I mean, arguably right now, you could almost say Amik Robertson's your number 3 on the outside in an emergency, and you could throw Rakestraw on the inside. But I think they want Rakestraw to get those reps on the outside, and that's where they're going to put him for now. So that'll be real interesting to watch in camp, and the evolution of Terrion Arnold. Coach, you were just talking about the great secondary and how some people, think the Ravens have a better secondary than we do. What are you looking to see out of Arnold and Rakestraw to, maybe validate more some of the confidence we have? Obviously, we've got those great safeties over top, but what do we need to see out of these guys?
Well, he's got to have that breakout year. And that was my argument, was if he has his breakout year, the sophomore year, the coming into his second year, he's learned how to get out, he's learned how to not to be so handsy. He's learning how he's just nasty. He's that guy that you don't want to play against as a wide receiver, because he's talking trash and he's barking all the time, and then he's grabbing you and tugging on you and pushing on you. And so if he has that breakout year, and then Amik turns into that third guy, which, because we could go with, I think Maddox maybe could be, whether he plays that slot or that safety. We talk about that later. So, but I think that's the biggest thing with Robertson. And you're going to get guys banged up, and then he may be a package. I mean, I'm sorry, Rakestraw, and he may end up being in one of those package guys. Again, it'll be interesting to see how Shepard runs it. But AG ran packages, and to have that next guy up that we aren't concerned with. And so I think we're in great shape. I think the depth is right. I think we have the competition is right, and who's going to beat who out. And if you're sitting as number 2 somewhere, you're a pretty good corner or a pretty good slot.
Oh, for sure. Definitely. James, Arnold, Rakestraw, what are you looking to see out of these guys?
Yeah, we saw how much Arnold progressed just last year, and I think that's going to continue this year. He's on an upward trajectory. I think he's one of those guys who by the end of the season, you could be talking about him being one of the top 10, 15, 20 corners in the league. If he keeps improving as much as he did at the beginning of the season. We saw how much he struggled early, but by the end of the season, he looked like a seasoned veteran out there playing corner. Rakestraw just really needs the reps. He's going to play a lot, I'm going to guess, in these exhibition games, just because he had the injury problems last year. So, he got a little behind. So he's going to need just more reps, getting used to stuff. But I mean, having a guy that's a second round pick and young and tall for a corner, as your third corner, that's a pretty big luxury in the NFL right now. Where teams go 3 wide in the Lions, and the Lions are not worried about it.
Oh, exactly. And let's point this out too. These reps, that's why this extra preseason game's a gift to the Lions.
Yes.
They are a team that is competing for the playoffs, which means you're not developing guys on the field right now. You need your top guys that are ready to go. And so the developmental guys, they got to do it in practice. They got to do it in preseason. And once the season starts, we've already gone through this in the past. You're not getting those reps. They're going to the guys that are going to be on the field. And so this preseason is very crucial for a lot of guys. And if Rakestraw is going to become dependable, he's going to get a lot of reps, and you're going to see a lot of growth in the preseason. So we've talked about a lot of guys we're hoping to step up, to get a little bit better, to maybe make the team or improve a little bit. But are there any guys that already are solid contributors that you think might take a step forward this year? Coach, anybody that's on your mind that you're like, man, this guy's pretty solid, but watch out, there might be another gear?
You guys, I mean, you kind of listed them too. I mean, we can go with JMO, of course. He had 1,000 yards last year, guys, and missed 2 games. He's gonna, the thing is, and he just wants it. I mean, every time you read or hear or listen, he's always working to get there. And I think, we can talk about him. We talk about our safeties. We can talk about linebacker Campbell's. We can talk about Gibbs. I mean, we have so much young talent there that these guys are hungry to make a name for themselves. I would go out and say JMO might have 1,200, 1,300 this year, just because of his yards per catch. You know, he had a
Yeah.
1,000 yards. What he averaged 17. I don't remember. Was it 17-3 last year? Is that right? Something in that area. Um, and so put another 10 catches on him, or put another 12 catches on him, put another 15 catches on him. And so, it's the breakout. Campbell's gonna have an unbelievable year. Just because of what he went through last year as the leader, as a second year guy. He had the green dot on his helmet. We have to get the green dot back. We got to sign him and get him in
Yeah.
camp. But Campbell's, because we need Campbell in that situation to step up until we think Barnes is fully healthy and stuff like that. So
Yeah. And I think, that's one of those things where out of necessity, Jack Campbell grew, right? It was, hey, it was one of those things where you learn as you have to because it's required. And that experience last year will translate into even better rewards this year. I think a lot of people are expecting JMO to do even just a little bit more. It doesn't have to be a lot bit more. But yeah, Coach, I don't know if you have that number in front of you or you just have that 17.3 memorized, but I did fact check because we do want to be accurate. And you are 100% on with that 17.3 per catch. And again, that chemistry with him and Goff continues to grow. And I think he will just take another step forward this year. Along with that, I don't know if Jahmyr Gibbs can take another step forward, but he is another guy who could. I mean, it's his second year. This is his third, right? So it's like, all right, well, if that's the case, there is potential for him to do even more. So, James, what do you want to add?
I think one other one, and Jerry mentioned it very briefly, that I think you could see take another step is Barnes. He's missed enough time with injuries and stuff like that, but we saw the continual growth out of him, and I think that having set most of last season, uh, he's going to have learned and soaked up a lot, and I think we'll see kind of a different player this season from him.
Yeah, yeah. Barnes is going to be coming back in a whole new perspective on things of having achieved success at a level he hadn't before, and that breeds confidence. And coach, a confident player is a dangerous player, especially when that confidence is backed up by actual ability, technique, and all that stuff. Your confidence catches up to your abilities, that's like the perfect sweet spot, right?
there's no doubt. And here's the other thing too. We got to talk about. We got to add to. They had goals of going to the Super Bowl last year, and each and every one of these individuals that got hurt are going to come back with that much more energy, that much more work ethics, that much more. I'm going to make up for last year. Each and every one of those guys that got hurt, in the back of their minds, say, I'm the reason we didn't go to the Super Bowl. That's just the athletic way. That's what athletes do. That's what coaches do. And so the how these guys are going to back, and that's a great call, James, on bringing Barnes up. That he was playing at a high level. He continued to get higher and higher as the seasons went on, and yeah, he could be that one that wow, that everybody says at the end of the year, wow. Especially if we have that whole linebacking core healthy and together.
For sure. And one last comment on Gibbs here. I don't know how you take a step forward from what he did, but I think there's a potential he could, but it might not always be reflected in his stats because the Lions aren't going to just give him the ball the way Philadelphia gave Saquon Barkley the ball. They want to share that load. They want him and Montgomery to have a load carried that puts them both at a healthy spot for the postseason. So, and we'll get to some of those wrinkles we might see here in a little bit. But anybody else you guys want to throw out there that you're thinking you might see something from before we move on? I mean, Branch and Kirby Joseph are already looking pretty amazing. I'm just wanting them to, kind of pick up where they left off.
Right. I think Levi too. I mean, Levi's another one I'm looking
Oh
forward
yeah,
to seeing him. He's kind of that guy that's always said back. We can talk about the rookies too. I mean, but Levi's the other one that, once that D line gets healthy and Levi gets into the spot where they exactly want him and not have him shifting and playing a couple packages, I think he's going to blow it up. And again, he's working on. He's going to be looking for a new that new contract. He's going to be looking for it. And I believe, and again, people don't talk about him enough. He's gotten better every year, and I think he's gonna take another step forward.
All right. Well, let's bring those rookies up. We're not looking for a step forward on those rookies. And by the way, Levi is a prime candidate for that, coach. And if he does, I mean, the fact that they got him back on that deal that they did, I think we've already talked about multiple times how great that is for the Lions and actually a big key to preventing a hole developing in part of that defense while McNeil is out. But let's look at these rookies. What are you hoping to see out of the rookies? Whether it's, Tyleek Williams, whether it's, Ratledge. Those are probably the two that you're looking at the most because those are the guys that are going to maybe be pushing for starting spots right away. James, what do you want to, and then Tesla is there. I don't think we're expecting him to start at any point, maybe late in the season, but he's buried down the depth chart and he's not needed to start. Where these other two guys, I think we kind of need them to. So what are you looking at the rookies?
Yeah, obviously, I think Williams is going to get a lot of run in the exhibition games. Same thing with Ratledge, Frazier, Hassanin. All those guys are going to get a lot of run in the exhibition games. I'm interested though to see what Taselaw what they do with him. I think that obviously the number 1 and 2 are pretty set in stone. But how are they going to mix and match the 3, 4, and 5 wide receivers there? With different packages with Patrick, Raymond, and Taselaw because they all bring 3 different skill sets. It could be interesting to see who the number 3 is from play to play, even, and how much of a legit threat right away Taselaw can be as one of those.
Okay, yeah, position battle wise, it will be interesting to see where he ends up and how much they use him and involve him. And I guess he's got the preseason coach to prove that they can trust him and become reliable early on, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, and he had again OTAs were positives. Oh my God, this could be one of those guys. You keep reading these articles. This could be this guy. This could be this guy. I mean, TP. The good thing is he's learning on Tim Patrick, a guy who can explain to talk to him about try to stay healthy, make sure you're on your upkeep. This is what you have to do. I missed 2 seasons because of injuries. What a great another veteran to teach him to take over TP's role eventually. Again, goal line situations, go 4 wides. We can go pretty tall. We got a couple 6'4", 6'5" guys, and I think he'll fit in that. I think he'll fit into some package deals. I think they'll bring him along slowly, like they always do. They will let him do the routes that he does the best, even though they say he runs every route well. And so it's going to be good. So skipping to him, if you want to skip to Hassan, he's another one of those guys that I'm gonna go on a limb, and I don't do this very often. You guys know that he's going to have 5+ sacks this year. The rookie.
Okay, Ahmed Hassanin.
I'm telling you right now, he's going to have 5+. And if they're not sacks, they're going to be pressure. So Hutch has 37 sacks this year.
Yeah, Hassanin is a guy who's caught everyone's attention since the draft. I think him and Miles Frazier, 5th and 6th round picks, are going to maybe have a little bit more of an impact on this team than we think. I think Frazier could work his way into a great backup position and be a reliable person should that be needed. And with all the moving parts on the defensive line, I mean, if Hassanin, he's got the motor, right? It's can he develop some of those extra next level skills that the coaching staff saw in him, James? And so Hassanin, this preseason is going to be great for him and Frazier.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Well, let's move to the tight end position before we talk about the offensive line and break it down a little bit more. There's going to be a position battle here at tight end. We've got not a log jam of guys, but we know that behind Sam Laporta, you got Brock Wright, who's the incumbent at number 2 and expected to be at number 2. But again, nothing's taken for granted. You've got Kenny Yeboah and Shane Zylstra there. I believe there might even be one more tight end on the roster at this point. James, what are you looking at from the tight end spot? What do you want to see?
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 others, that are young guys that are kind of the deal guy, I think it is, that made the team out of the rookie camp, that made the 90, and a couple other guys. But I think that those 4 you mentioned are the main 4. So it's going to be interesting to see if they keep 4. They haven't really before this. They seem to really like Shane Zylstra though, but they brought in Kenny Yeboah, whose strength is blocking, more so than any of the other tight ends. So that gives them something else. We know that David Shaw likes to use multiple tight end sets, so maybe they even do keep four. They could designate one of them as kind of an H-back, fullback type guy too. Or multiples. I mean, we've seen Brock Wright play in that position. We've seen Laporta. We've seen Zylstra. All of those guys being put in the fullback type position, and even James Mitchell before that when he was still on the team. So they could use any of these guys like that. I mean, if they put Yeboah at fullback and just ran, ran him as a fullback, that would be a pretty nice little lead blocker there for either of the running backs.
All right, Coach, what do you want to see out of these tight ends here? I mean, we know three of them. We've seen them for a while. Now you got Kenny Yeboah in here. What are you looking for?
Well, I think I'm going to back up James on that. Yeboah is the one because I think they want that sure blocking tight end. Brock Wright's kind of been that guy, and then they've thrown him some passes where Yeboah's could be the same type of guy. Again, do they want to go to 13 personnel? I'm not crying if they do. I mean, I'd love to see it, especially with those guys. But I think I think he's got the insight. Zylstra's got the hands, been around. But again, with the new OC and like James said, with Shaw in there, how are they going to go? Do they want more of that blocking type? And then, Zylstra's a better receiving tight end than Brock Wright, but Brock Wright still can catch the rock and he's a pretty decent blocker. So, and I think part of it, I think they're going to look at somebody where they can maybe split out, Laporta a little bit, that kind of a flex tight to get him off and not blocking as much. But we'll see. This is again four preseason games to see where they're going with it. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, and I like the depth we have at tight end. That's the other thing going in is you feel comfortable with it with all these guys, and obviously Lions are going to use them to run the ball. Running the ball though can't be done without a great offensive line. We know the tackles. The interior, that's it. That's the position battle we're going to really watch because, as we said, right when the news broke that Frank Ragnow was retiring, Graham Glasgow was penciled in at center on ESPN with Christian Mahogany and Tate Ratledge as the guards. Now it sounds like Tate Ratledge might be the center, and maybe Glasgow is going to be moved back to guard, and so. It'll be interesting to see the way it plays out. And just because that might be the way it looks right now, July 28th, it could be looking very different. James, those are the top three guys that you're expecting to be on the starting part of the offensive line. That's what we're expecting. There's also some other guys that are saying, hey, we want to work and have our shot at it too. So I wouldn't count anybody out at this point. What are you looking for from that position battle?
It's going to be an interesting one. What do they do with Glasgow? Is Glasgow going to be the starter at one of those guard spots, or is he going to be like kind of the super backup that they kind of like him being in that role too? They could just decide to go all young and just put Ratledge at center and Frazier and Mahogany at the guards and just have three young cheap guys being there in the interior line for a few years. And by the end of the season this year, they should be seasoned, and you go into the playoffs with three hungry guys there in the middle that all have some pretty good talent on top of that as well. So they're in a pretty good position. I mean, barring injuries, obviously, and then they've got other guys at guard that are guys that they can just put in there. They still got Nice and Muti and Awashika, Kingsley Eguakwan, any number of guys like that. And Sorsdal possibly even. So, I mean, the depth at offensive line is going to be interesting. I mean, they're going to be rotating guys in and out, I think, during the preseason games like crazy to try to get film and evaluations on all these guys, put them in different situations and see how they do.
Yeah, and especially that interior part because it is a work in progress. I mean, they brought in Tristan Cologne
Yes.
as a 5-year vet as well. And so I think you're going to see Glasgow back over to the guard position to start the season with Frazier coming in. But again, I'm making a prediction here. We have a whole preseason that's going to play that stuff out. I don't have some crystal ball. I'm banking on experience over rookie here, Coach. That being said, this is going to be a great opportunity for Miles Frazier this preseason to get a lot of snaps on that offensive line. What are you looking for out of this position battle? What's important to you from a coach's perspective?
Well, the first one is Ratledge. We got to get a contract on him and get him, make sure he's in camp because he can't miss a week. He can't miss a week. So when that first broke about Rags, I came out right away and I started thinking. I says Glasgow's going to center because Glasgow's the center we got. But then again, when my coaching thing took over, I said Glasgow played out of position last year and didn't play really well. Now they're going to move him back into his best position, and he's going to be hungry for that. And the other part was, the old rule is you don't change a position or two positions to cover for one. So Glasgow getting put back in, let the rookie learn behind him at the left guard spot, let the center, let Rutledge and the other one that they brought in fight that out, and then see if Frazier becomes that backup to take over Glasgow's spot when he retires. So I think that's the thing. Again, the combination who communicates the best, who talks the best, and I think we had talked about veteran, rookie, veteran, rookie, veteran when this first came out with Rags retired. Now I think you're going to have veteran, rookie, second year player with a couple starts, and then the best. So that's just the way I see it. But again, knock on wood, injuries could happen. Things could break out. Frazier might come out and they might all go, "Oh my God, that dude's way better than we thought he was going to be." So, and again, I think I hate to keep talking about it, but Ratledge has got to be the center because he loves the hunt and he loves the fish, and that did. So you got to have the same mentality of that guy. So we're going to go with that.
Well, and like James said, that they've got some great options there to work in because they drafted. They prepared versus just hoping and wishing that everything would just work out. So it's going to be a work in progress, and hopefully they work through it pretty well this preseason. Anything else you want to talk about? Any other position battles, James? I think you want to touch on the secondary again beyond just the development of Arnold and Rakestraw, but just the way the whole thing's going to work out.
Yeah, I mean, right now they've got 8 NFL vets at corner competing there. I don't think the Lions are going to keep 8, obviously. So the competition there is going to be good. I mean, you got Reed, Arnold, Robertson, and Rakestraw are pretty well locked up. But then behind that, you've got Stanley Thomas Oliver, who's a guy they brought up from the practice squad last year, and played a decent amount. They got Avonte Maddox, the Detroit native they brought in from the Eagles. Rocky Sin, who's an NFL veteran, plenty of playing time, and then Khalil Dorsey, who was playing a lot and playing really well before he had that broken leg last season. They've got a blessing of riches there too at corner. So they're going to be maybe looking at maybe Thomas Oliver goes back to the practice squad or something like that, and they can see if they just keep the other 3 more veteran guys behind those 4 or something, and Maddox is more of a safety kind of. So that could be maybe how you get down to 6 corners. But the depth that they all over this roster is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and that's good that they brought those veterans in, Coach. I think last year was pretty solid, and they wanted to make sure they didn't return to 2 or 3 years ago, that if they had injuries, that secondary became a liability, because it became a strength last year.
For sure.
Yeah. Anything else you want to touch on, Coach? Any other position battles before we talk about things in general we want to see out of minicamp, or not minicamp, out of training camp?
No, I just want to get lighter on the screen. I can't figure that out.
That's what happens when it gets dark, right?
Yeah. And I get thrown outside my own house.
So, all right. Well, what do we want to see most out of camp? I think obviously overall, number one, we want health, right? We want people to be healthy coming out of training camp. I think that's what we want to see the most. But there's a lot to look at this year. There's more changes you should expect out of this Lions team than we saw a year ago, because you have new coordinators. You're going to have a couple new players in the starting lineup. I think Jahmyr Gibbs, whether he intended to or not, let it slip that there is going to be another formation. We might get to see, fans might get to see what they've wanted to see, which is split backs. Him and Gibbs, or him and Montgomery, both in the backfield at the same time, and running out maybe for a pass. And maybe more dump offs or something like that. Especially we saw the increased receiving ability of him last year. James, this is something fans have been looking for. They're like, why don't you put all your best players on the field? Put them both on the field at the same time, even if it's a decoy, then the teams have to account for it. What do you think there's an increased chance of maybe seeing this? And is this something you'd like to see?
I think so. I think it'd be a great thing for them to employ. I mean, you've got David Montgomery, who is just great at running between the tackles and getting positive yardage. Like you very rarely see this guy get hit for a loss. And then if you had Jahmyr Gibbs in the backfield at the same time and you motion him out and put him in the slot opposite of Amon-Ra St. Brown or whoever, now you've got him lined up wide. How a defense is going to adjust to that is something that Goff's going to just be able to read and pick some things off from that. So defenses are going to have to will be on their heels almost if that happens. Because I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the most elusive runners in the NFL. You get him out in space with the ball, that's going to be dangerous. So then they're trying to maybe kind of cover it for that, and now you've got David Montgomery just plowing ahead for 7 yards every time.
Well, Coach, I mean, this is something the Lions fans wanted to have happen last year, and Ben Johnson didn't do it. You've got John Morton in here. You think, I mean, it sounds like this is what might happen. Might not happen full time, but a little bit. What are your thoughts on all this and the possibilities?
Well, I think it's huge. The big thing is first of all, you can identify if you're in man coverage because if Gibbs goes out and the linebacker follows him, we can still, you can make your adjustment and change on that. So I think that's one of the biggest things that they're gonna work with on that. So it'll be nice to see that because he can catch the ball. He's unbelievable in open space, and how great it would look, to be able to get him out there with, bubble screens. Who knows, quick outs, quick slants. You put Gibbs and JMO out there. That's a lot of speed right there, and so it'll be fun to see. It'll be interesting to see how well they switch those guys around and how well they use those guys.
Mm-hmm. Could
Yeah, I think it's gonna.
could you imagine if you had JMO and Gibbs lined up on opposite sides and you ran them both on reverse
Yeah,
routes? How much as a defender you would just freak out?
yeah,
Especially if they both ran behind the line of scrimmage too, and then you're like, "Wait a minute, what's going on?" It draws everybody in, and then there's St.
Yeah.
Brown down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what type of defense? I mean, are you going to put a linebacker on Jahmyr Gibbs? I mean, and so it's going to create it could create some real interesting matchups. Obviously, we won't see a whole lot of it. Folks, I think that's where you're going to want to see some of your joint practices. I think you're more likely to see some of that stuff in joint practice. Some of that stuff, obviously, you're not going to see much of those guys in the preseason. Something you won't see, but you will see, or what will be happening is the coordinators are going to get a feel. They're going to get their reps. And I think that is extremely important because even though we can't see them getting their reps, they're going through and they're narrating their game plan, coach, right? And they're calling their plays as it goes. And then after the game's over, they can go back and dissect what they did and what worked and didn't. Not did the play work and did the player do what they needed. It's, hey, was this the right call with this formation? Was this the right feel? 2 new coordinators, coach. They got 4 games of practice in addition to those joint practice sessions. But I think the preseason is going to be really important for the coaches, the coordinators, because then they're in the real flow of a game, not just we want to try this play against this defense. It's how does it flow. So talk about what you think they're going to get out of this.
yeah. I mean, you said the joint practice is one of them because then it's there's going to be some live things, there's going to be some one-on-one things and stuff like that against different bodies to know what they look like. There's going to be when you can go live in those situations. It's huge. You can go through Scully, you can go two-step, you can go thud drill and stuff like that, and you're not getting the true read. So the joint practice will definitely help out. And then, of course, with again, 4 preseason games for us. New coordinators figuring things out, where we're going to go with it, what terminology we're going to use. Can we slide Gibbs outside? Can we put, are we going to have 3 tight ends on the field? You won't see a lot of that scheming stuff in these joint practices as well in the preseason because, we want to go into Green Bay with Green Bay going, what are they going to run? Who are they going to use? Where are they going to line guys up? But you will see sprinkles of things that people have to work on. And it's going to be huge for the coordinators as well as the players. I mean, it's just it's a big thing. And again, coordinators don't win games, the players do, but the coordinators put them in the right position to win those games.
Yeah, and we'll talk later on how someone put somebody in a position to win the game, and that's where this has to happen, right, James? That's where these coordinators are going to get that feel so they can make sure they do what Coach just said.
Yeah, yeah, and in the preseason and in those the joint practice and stuff, yeah, you're probably not going to see anything too fancy, and it'll be pretty vanilla. But you might be able to look at the formations, the base formations that they're using, and say, okay, well, this is a little different than the way Ben Johnson did it, or wherever, or maybe they try to split Sion Vaki out in a preseason game and try to get some practice on that and say, okay, this is what we're going to do with Gibbs later, and get some of these these young offensive linemen kind of maybe comfortable with doing some of those things, the different blocking schemes that you're going to have to do for those things. But you're not going to probably notice a ton different. It's preseason. They're going to be working on the basics for the most part and sprinkle a few things in there. But it is big for the coordinators as much as the players themselves because they got to get everything down. They got to get how they get a play in, all those things that they are not used to doing. This is new roles for both of these guys. Morton hasn't been a play caller for years, specifically been a play caller. So there's things that he's going to have to pick up on and learn how to do in 25 seconds.
For sure. All right, well, guys, I've got nothing else before we get over to Netflix quarterback. Coach, anything else you want to add?
No, just looking forward to answering some of the questions that we have in the next couple, 4 or 5 weeks.
For sure. All right, Netflix quarterback season 2. Great show. We'll have some spoilers in here, but we're not here to just tell you, oh, it was great, this happened, that happened. We're going to kind of tell you about the why it matters to us. All right. The one thing that is kind of funny is Amon-Ra St. Brown did make a cameo in this one, and we learned why he's got the number 14. Apparently, he asked his girlfriend to count up the number of wide receivers that went in front of him, and she said 14. But how many were there, Coach?
16.
16. So it didn't work exactly perfect, but Jared Goff's number 16, so he probably wasn't going to have it. But the number 14 just suits Amon-Ra St. Brown so well that, I almost call it serendipitous, right? It wasn't intentional, but it just worked out really well.
Well, Saint even said it. Saint said it. He goes, Goff looks way better in 16 than I would. So it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, he took it all in good stride, right, James?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything seemed to work out pretty well, and his girlfriend took it pretty well too.
Yeah,
she owned it.
So again, we got to see a lot of insights on Jared Goff, and that was the great thing. And I got to say, I really like Jared Goff's confidence and just his overall demeanor in general. He's got a confident demeanor, but it's not cocky, right? It's not too big for himself. But he's confident, and you need to have a quarterback that's confident. If you don't have a confident quarterback, you don't have a quarterback. Mm-hmm. And, after the Cowboys game, there was a great quote because Tom Brady is like, I would have loved to have played an offense like this. And it's kind of like you're saying your offense wasn't as good as the one that this quarterback has or something. Right. And I just love Jared Goff. He's like, too bad, Tom. Yeah. Like, that was just perfect.
Yeah.
So, Coach, you got to love that out of your quarterback and just the way he was with that.
Well, and I think the confidence level, the chip on his shoulder, I just love the show. I think it was great because here's what I got out of it. How much the human side of a player is in this organization. Not the skills, not how good they are at a position, but how much the coaching staff, the administrators, the players, the trainers, and everybody, how they build a family. they build a thing to where nobody wants to let nobody down because it's like letting your brother down. And I think, and that's what I got out of that. And then the Jared Goff thing about he takes the blame on himself, and he doesn't say, well, I mean, when you listen to him in this whole thing, his throws, I gotta play better. I made a bad throw there. I did this, I did that. And the nice thing about him, you guys, I'm sure will agree with me, Jared Goff learns from his mistakes, and you don't see him a second time. So the league better beware.
Yeah, no, the type of quarterback he has developed into is one that I think sometimes, maybe oftentimes, gets underappreciated. James, you just the person side of him, right? The personal side was just it's nice to see that, understand it, and I think you grow a greater appreciation for Jared Goff.
Yeah, for sure. You see his relationship, with his wife, with his dog, with the
Yeah.
team, everything. Even when he was giving those kids the scholarships, how emotional he got at being able to help these kids out, doing that. And one other thing I liked though that he did was, something we haven't really seen. He kind of took a pretty veiled shot at Sean McVay when they asked him about the trade, and saying that he didn't handle it with the right maturity.
That the coach did not handle it with the right
Yeah,
maturity.
that McVay did not handle it. They
Yeah.
did not have the maturity to talk to him about it beforehand. And he basically called Goff up minutes before the trade broke on social media and to the media.
Yeah.
And that was it. He had no idea it was coming even before that. So it was kind of interesting. And like you said, his personality comes forward. He's a leader, but he's not a me first guy. Um, which, Kirk Cousins kind of has a little bit more of that. You can see in this show that he was really wanting the spotlight more so than Goff. Goff is like, I'm okay, I'm here, but I'm not making myself the story necessarily, even though he was one third of this story and everything. He just comes off as a really pretty humble person that you can really root for.
Yeah, and I also liked, going back a little further is they showed his transition to Detroit, right? And they showed what he went through. They showed how excited Campbell and Holmes were at the time. And,
Mhm.
he just talked about how, I think him and St. Brown have some interesting things here where I don't think either of them wanted to come to Detroit, but I think they both acknowledged that was the greatest thing that ever happened to them. And they've been able to build something. And Goff said, I have a first time GM and a first time head coach. And the first decision they made was to choose me.
Yeah.
And that says something right there. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
And they also showed, I mean, the moment I bought in, I will tell you, was the Jared Goff pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown to beat the Vikings to get that first win. And the way Goff celebrated with Dan Campbell, that is what did it for me because it told me that coach believed in that quarterback and that quarterback believed in that coach. So, yeah, so great little trip down insights and just giving you more to the story that you knew part of it, but there's always a little bit more that we don't always know at the time. And when it comes out later, it just helps you understand it better. Speaking of which, the Titans game, Goff rolled his ankle pretty bad. And I've got to fully admit, guys, I didn't realize this. I did not realize that happened. Coach, did you know that? I mean, were you
Well,
aware?
I remember I remember when he got up and he got up slow, and then I thought it was he got the wind knocked out of him. And then I was kind of watching his gait when he was walking, and I kind of never really acknowledged it because nobody really, there was never any, oh my God, check his ankle. Oh my God, he's going to the 10. Oh my God, he's doing this. And so I kind of just dropped. But for him to play, if anybody questions his toughness again, I mean, go watch it because that was a nasty twist. And he played through it. Here's the other thing. He has his therapist or his guy that's with him. He started therapy after the game in the locker room. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
how many people do that? I love the guy. I'm sorry. And again, watching those things just keeps, crossing the T's and dotting the I's for me about we have the right guy and he is going to lead us to that Super Bowl.
Yeah, he endears you. You're
Mhm.
endeared more to him. James, that Titans game, that was like week 8, so they still had half a
Mhm.
season left.
Yeah, and kind of like Jerry, I remember him taking that hit, and then like Jerry said, the way the guy fell on him, it could have also been that he got the wind knocked out of him or whatever. But then Goff just kind of trotted to the sideline and kind of shook it off, and you didn't really think about it or anything like that. But you know, he said in the interview part, I think that, oh, this is going to be something that's going to hurt for a couple of weeks, and so that maybe kind of helps you explain away, I guess, a little bit the 5 interception game 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks after that.
Mhm.
They kind of glossed over it completely for the game in between, which is the Packers game, and just concentrated on the fact that he had never won a game in a cold or had that, kind of BS label that he couldn't win game in the cold, even though he had before. So I think it kind of helps explain, I guess, a little bit about that 5 pick game, which was like kind of complete aberration in the rest of the season for him.
Yeah, no, and it wasn't all his fault. There was lots of stuff that went on in that game as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, just again, you didn't hear him complaining about his ankle. You didn't see, you saw him working through it. And this whole cold weather stuff, it's way overblown. It's low-hanging fruit that isn't even 100% accurate. And I remind everybody, James Cook was at the game in Lambeau Field when it was like 0 degrees out. And how did the Lions beat the Packers? Jared Goff threw a pass to win the game. Okay, a completion to DJ Shark, and that's how they won. They didn't run the ball on 4th down; he threw it. So don't tell me Jared Goff can't play in cold weather. And if you bring up the Carolina game, nothing went well that week. So let's just forget about that. But talking about the Packers, the Lions versus Packers game in Detroit. This was awesome, awesome insight behind the scenes. It was the Thursday after Thanksgiving. We've talked about it multiple times. The Lions went shopping on Black Friday for like 3 new players because of injuries. And you got to see the team meeting, coach. Dan Campbell is like, offense, this is all on you. And then he goes, we're putting this all on you. And he points right at Jared Goff during the meeting. And I mean, the defense was beat up, but I mean, coach, if that's the reality of the situation, you got to be real with your players, right?
You know what? That whole scene, Duke was in the room. I said, you got to come watch this because that whole thing where he said it's on the offense to carry the defense, and then he went to the guy that is the leader, is the catalyst, is the quarterback, and said, "You basically better have the game of your life. You better lead us." And then, then again, everybody complains about his 4th down concepts and stuff like that. And he said, we're going on for 4th down, even if unless it's 4th and 20. I mean, and the demeanor, they won the game because of that demeanor. They won the game because of the way he came in and said, this is what we're going to do. And we've talked about this, about the going on 4th down. We've talked about this week in and week out, people complaining about he's not going to win a Super Bowl. He lost the San Francisco game. He's done this. No, he has. You know what he hasn't lost? He hasn't lost his players. And as a coach, if you don't lose your players, they're going to fight tooth and nail and do everything they can for you. And you know what? I don't care what anybody says about it. He has not lost his players. When he walks in the locker room and said, "This is what we're going to do," that's what they do. And they're going to, as people have said, "I'll die for you, Dan Campbell." That is exactly what he has developed and the culture he's developed. As you can see, I am extremely fired up about that, and I wish I could sit in every one of those meetings.
And coach, I'm going to take it a step further. I think not only has he not lost his players, I think there's players on other teams that want to play for him.
Yeah.
And how often? I mean, they just had a thing about like the 10 worst head coaches in this century, and 3 of the 10 worst were Detroit Lions coaches. And so the fact that this is a complete opposite end of that spectrum is amazing. And that's the other thing we talk about with James. That what Dan Campbell does isn't by accident. What you see on game day isn't like he's just trying to be bullheaded. Like he's reading the script, not the script, but he's reading the situation.
Mm-hmm.
He knows what the defense looks like. He knows where they are. He knows what it's going to take. But man, that speech was pretty darn impressive. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, and then there was the part two where he changes his mind at the end. He was going to just kick on the 1 4th down and take the points and make the defense have to play defense against Jordan Love and company for 40 some seconds. And then he was like, you know what? They're out of timeouts. We can just go for it here and then not ever give them the ball back. And even if we miss the kick, we're just going to overtime.
Mhm.
Um,
That was
and
huge.
and that was huge. The Lions were 4 out of 5 on 4th down in that game.
Yeah.
And they broke that part down where it's the final 2 minutes, and with 30 seconds, you hear Campbell say, "We're going to kick." And but you could tell he was going back and forth on it, Coach. And then you could see Goff wasn't happy about it. I mean, he may have dropped a not so happy word as he was like, okay. And then Dan's like, you know what? Skip it, man. Let's go for it. And him going for it was staying true to him. It's true to himself, what he said. He said, offense, we're going to win the game. Because if they kick that field goal, then the defense has to win it for 30 seconds. And like Coach Campbell said, is that fair to do to these guys at the end? And so that right there Coach, you've dealt with this stuff in ways James and I haven't. Making those decisions in real time like that, he had to weigh everything out and he had to stay with who he was. And so what did you make of that scene?
Exactly the same thing. Here's what I made of it. I am in a team meeting as a head coach, and I tell them we're going for it on 4th down the whole game because we got guys coming in off the street to play defense. Offense, you have to win the game. Why would you change what you've told them? And that's what Dan Campbell, that's what he was. Here's the thing is, I think in his mind, he was dealing with not kicking a field goal against San Francisco or kicking the field goal against the past and said, I don't want to second guess myself. And I think then he went with and said, wait a second. That's not what I told the guys that we're going to do. I told the guys, offense, you're going to win the game. And what did we do? Let's run behind the best tackle in the game. And can we get a yard with the best running back duo in the game? And yes. And I think that's what it was. I think the timeout, the whole thing like that, it wasn't a rash decision. But again, did he read the body language of Jared Goff? And when you watch that, if you haven't watched it, Jared Goff's body language when he's standing on the sidelines, then look at Jared Goff's body language when he says, we're going for it. Jared Goff's shoulders were like 72 feet wide when they said they were going for it. I'm just that is the stuff I watch, and I kept playing it over and over, going, oh, this is just totally awesome.
Yeah, and James, the quarterback's excited to go for it. He wants to go for it. He wants to do it. That's what you need in a quarterback that's going to lead you in the postseason.
Mm-hmm. And he was excited to run a running play.
Yeah.
As a quarterback.
Right.
The other interesting thing that comes out about Jared Goff in this whole thing, though, too, is he uses a lot of sentence enhancers that I didn't necessarily expect that to be coming from Jared Goff.
Yeah.
Yes, he does. All right, here's your. I just want you to give me a yes or a no. I don't want you to answer the question other than that. Jared's dog, Quincy, makes a few appearances here. They show him in the Christmas tree scene, and Quincy's chewing on an ornament. Coach, did you recognize, do you know what that ornament was?
Well, the first one, it was that I thought he was chewing on his ornament, but he chewed on the one thing, but I did miss that one. Which one was it?
James, did you notice what he was chewing on? There was a different one. There were two, and Coach is right about one that they took away, but there's one they didn't take away. Did you notice what it was?
Mm-mm.
Okay. I'm going to leave that as an Easter egg, folks. If you find it, you'll know. Please comment on the video and let us know you went and found it, because it's serendipitous. Is the word.
All right.
All right.
Look tonight.
All right. A couple more things before we get out of here. We are getting a little long in the show. Love how they broke down the stumble bum play versus the Bears, how they explained it in more detail. The Vikings 4th down snap offsides explained. This is something we've talked about, you guys. Jared Goff called it the Dan Campbell effect. He says, they think we're going for it. And we knew, James, we were at that game and we're like, I don't think they're really going to go for it. And they got their team to jump off sides, the Vikings, and that did it. And so how awesome is that to see that happening, James?
That was I didn't get that far of that. I'm not to that episode yet.
Okay.
I
Well,
can do it.
Coach, yeah, but
Sorry,
but
I
you
gotta-
remember it happening. Yeah, sorry, yeah, earmuffs. But Coach, that's what we've talked about. So the other team can't rest on a fourth down play, or they have to get overly aggressive, and that gives the advantage to the offense.
Oh, hands down. I mean, the thing is, they're pinning their ears back, going, they're going to go for it, and the defensive line in their right mind is, we're going to get this. I'm going to be the one that makes the stop, and then you go to a hard count. I mean, it's just genius. It's just and again, did Ben John all that? The Dan Campbell. The bottom line is Dan Campbell and that staff had that in there, and that's always going to be in there. And we talked about it, after the game, how genius that was, because again, everybody's got the D line's got their ears pinned back, and maybe you should watch the ball and not listen for the hard count to try to get the quick snap. But just a great call.
It was so perfect. And again, they building everything up, just like they did in Dallas when Skipper was there and all that stuff. They built that up all game long, like they've been building up this fourth down thing all season long. The last episode's tough to watch, folks. I got to tell you that right now. James, is going to be tough. But you learn something cool about Jack Fox. I'm not going to spoil that one for you, but there's a cool thing with Jack Fox. I do think also we talked about the toughness. We saw the toughness of Jared Goff after he took that shot, after that interception in the Washington game and he got hit. And you just get to see a little bit more than you did on the broadcast or you knew about after the game by seeing some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. Graham Glasgow had a very touching moment, and it was heartbreaking and tough at the same time. So I'll kind of just leave that as it is, I think. Coach, anything you'd say about the Graham Glasgow moment? I mean, it's real short, but I think it sums up what the season meant to Graham and how hard he tried.
Well, and it goes back to what I said earlier about the human nature and the human side of these athletes, about what the Detroit Lions are all about. And it's that those when I see those things, when I see Dan Campbell crying, I see Jared Goff almost tearing up, I see Grasco, I see Meek telling us that you can't bury somebody that came from dirt, just those things. That's why, as a Lions fan, I am so happy to be a Lions fan, because that's kind of what, as a coach, you always want to get out of that. Will these guys talk to each other 25 years from now and 20 years from now? I believe so, because I think it's a family, and that family coming together with all the things we talked about and what this season's going to look like.
Yeah, and one thing I will, in the last episode, James, they show Jared's wife, Kristen, in the stands. And everything you see her say and do probably extremely accurately reflected how every Detroit Lions fan felt in those moments. And it was just like, she is spot on reflecting everything that everyone's feeling. And it was just like, that was unfortunately the most poetic way to end the thing. And it showed how tough it was for everybody to see it come to an end.
Mm-hmm.
So quarterback, huge success, obviously having the vested interest like we did last year with receiver, because we had a Detroit Lion player in it, and we got to learn a little bit more about the player, some of the coaches, and the organization. All right, guys, it's time to get out of here. Before we do, James, any final thoughts, any last words before we sign off for this one?
I'm all good. I'm just looking forward to that Hall of Fame game, seeing which one of these guys is going to step up.
Awesome. Coach, how about you? Any final words?
Oh, same thing. Can't wait, and can't wait to go down and watch a practice or two to see it live.
I agree. I look forward to that as well. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Please tell your friends and family about the show. Find us on social media sites as well as any major streaming platforms. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reviews. Check out more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.